Prologue. A Call from Hell. They break their silence when you least expect it. February 2023, 6:40 a.m. A phone shatters the frozen silence of a St. Petersburg detective's office. On the other end, a duty officer from Polar Owl prison colony, 67 kilometers from Labitnangi, beyond the Arctic Circle. "We've got a lifer here who wants to confess to murders you don't know about. Dmitry Voronenko. Says he's kept quiet for 17 years, but now he's ready to tell everything." This isn't the first such call. Between 2023 and 2025, across Russia, serial killers serving life sentences suddenly started talking. Confessions poured in like an avalanche. 16 new victims of Moscow's meticulous Strangler. The 13th murder of the serial killer known as Spider. Another confession from the Angarsk maniac, Popkov, who now has 86 proven victims. What makes monsters speak? Why did they stay silent for decades, only to suddenly open their mouths? And, most importantly, how many more corpses does the Russian prison system still hide? In this documentary investigation, we'll penetrate the walls of Russia's most terrifying prisons, where those society prefers to forget spend their final days. But forgetting proves impossible, because they never stop killing, even behind bars. They kill memory, the peace of victims' families, and faith in justice. But there's something even more disturbing. What if their confessions aren't about guilt, but about something far darker? Chapter 1. The Petersburg Strangler. New Revelations. The man who strangled children, Polar Owl prison colony, Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous District. Temperature outside, -42 degrees Celsius. Here, in one of the most isolated points on the planet, in cell number 237, sits a man who turned St. Petersburg's playgrounds into hunting grounds. Dmitry Petrovich Voronenko, 54 years old, born July 29, 1971, in the small Kyrgyz town of Kokyangak. Outwardly unremarkable, average height, graying hair, if you passed him on the street, you might mistake him for an accountant or librarian. But beneath this deceptive ordinariness lurks a monster who hid 2 murders from investigators for 17 years. The monster's childhood. Kokyangak, Kyrgyz Soviet Socialist Republic, the 1970s. A small mining town in the Tian Shan foothills. Here, in an ordinary working-class family, grew a boy who showed sadistic tendencies at age 6. Neighbors remember, little Dima would catch cats and dogs, tie ropes around their necks, and watch them suffocate. This is a classic marker of future serial killers, the McDonald triad: cruelty to animals, fire setting, and bedwetting after age 5. Voronenko exhibited all 3 signs. He was a quiet child, but something about him wasn't right. When dead cats were found in the yard, everyone somehow immediately thought of him, recalls Anna Petrovna Kuznetsova, a neighbor in Kokyangak. During adolescence, the family moved to St. Petersburg. Voronenko finished school there, received vocational training, worked as a mechanic. Nothing foreshadowed catastrophe. But at 23, he committed his first murder. Hunting children. May 20th, 1994. Sosnovka Park, St. Petersburg. 15-year-old Tatiana was walking with a friend. A stranger approached, started talking, offered to show them something interesting. The friend refused, but Tatiana went with him. She was never seen alive again. This was Voronenko's first proven murder. Then came more. 16-year-old Natalia Logvinenko, 10-year-old Elena Petrova, 11-year-old Maria Starodubtseva. He strangled them all with his bare hands, after rape. Voronenko's hunting methods were refined to perfection. He stalked children in parks and playgrounds, started casual conversations, introduced himself as a friend of their parents, lured them to secluded places to see a kitten or find a lost toy. After the crime, meticulously eliminated traces, burned victims' clothing. He hunted methodically like a professional predator. He studied children's routes, memorized where they played, what time they returned home, recalls operative Anatoly Smirnov, who led the case in 2006. 17 years of silence. In 2008, Voronenko received a life sentence for 4 proven child murders. At trial, he remained calm, almost indifferent. The killer's final words proved prophetic. "It's pointless for me to say anything. Nobody understands me anyway. You could publicly execute me in Palace Square. It won't change anything now." Voronenko spent 17 years in solitary confinement at Polar Owl Colony. The conditions for lifers here are draconian. 22.5 hours per day in a 7-square-meter cell. 1.5 hours of exercise in an aquarium, a concrete yard under open sky. Television banned for the first 10 years. Visits with relatives, no more than twice per year. Correspondence under strict censorship. But even under these conditions, Voronenko didn't break. Moreover, he kept a diary where he described his crimes in detail. For 2,847 days, he recorded every detail, every memory. The 2025 Confessions. February 20th, 2025. Investigators from St. Petersburg arrived at the colony. Voronenko requested a meeting and made a statement that shocked even seasoned detectives. "I'm ready to tell you about 2 murders I never confessed to. One in November 2005 in Polezhaevsky Park. Another in September 2006. I stayed silent because I wanted to leave the parents hope." Now I understand. That was cruel. First hidden murder. Natalia Krasnikova, 34 years old, mother of 2 children. November 5th, 2005. Returning from work through Polezhaevsky Park, Voronenko attacked from behind, strangled her, hid the body in bushes. Officially, the woman was listed as missing. Second hidden murder. Daria Sokolova, 12 years old. September 18th, 2006, playing on a playground in the courtyard of a building on Rudnev Street. Voronenko lured the girl, raped and strangled her in the basement of an abandoned house, burned the body in a boiler room. Details that shocked investigators. He remembered everything down to the smallest detail. The color of victims' clothing, the weather that day, exactly what he said while luring them. Yet he couldn't name exact dates, either November or October 2005. But he reproduced the crime details with photographic precision, recalls investigator Alexander Gavrilov. The polygraph detected no signs of deception. All details matched materials from missing persons cases. The 2025 verdict. April 21st, 2025. The St. Petersburg City Court sentenced Voronenko to 18 years imprisonment for 2 new episodes. 18 years added to a life sentence, a formality but symbolically important. This is justice, 20 years late. At least now victims' relatives know the truth, commented prosecutor Igor Volkov. Life in Polar Owl. Winter 2022. A new cellmate was placed with Voronenko, neo-Nazi Alexei Voivodin, leader of the banned Combat Terrorist Organization. Voivodin hated all non-Russians. Voronenko, with his Asian appearance, his mother was Korean, became the perfect target. Every day brought beatings, humiliation, psychological pressure. Voivodin called him narrow-eyed scum and forced him to tell details of the child murders, said if Voronenko didn't entertain him with stories, he'd kill him, recalls a source in the colony administration. This became the breaking point. Voronenko realized silence no longer protected him. In December 2022, he filed a report requesting a meeting with an investigator. "I'm tired of carrying this weight. Victims' parents have a right to know the truth, and it'll be easier for me too," Voronenko explained his decision during interrogation. Chapter 2. Spider expands his web. the human spider. IK6, Melikovo, Vladimir region. In cell number 45 sits a man whom cellmates fear even more than the administration. Sergei Alexandrovich Popkov, 49 years old. He got his nickname not from love of comics, but from his ability to entangle victims in a psychological web. 12 proven murders across 6 Russian regions, from Murmansk to Rostov-on-Don. 15 years of hunting people, and in September 2025, the 13th confession. A murder from 27 years ago. Serial killer profile Sergei Popkov was born March 15, 1976, in Arkhangelsk to a dysfunctional family. Father, an alcoholic, mother, a prostitute. From age 12, he lived on the streets, engaged in petty theft. A 2018 psychiatric evaluation revealed in Popkov dissociative identity disorder, sadistic tendencies, pathological lying. Yet he was deemed legally sane. He could be absolutely normal one moment, then transform into a cold-blooded killer the next. A classic case of multiple personality, explains psychiatrist Elena Makarova, who conducted the evaluation. Geography of death. First murder, 1998, Arkhangelsk. Victim, 23-year-old saleswoman Olga Ivanova. Popkov met her at a cafe, walked her home, raped and strangled her in the entrance hall. Then it got worse. Popkov never stayed in one place. He wandered the country, leaving corpses everywhere. 2001, Murmansk. Murder of fisherwoman Anna Severnaya. 2003, Petrozavodsk. Death of Karelian State University student Marina Belodzerova. 2005, Vologda. Killing of pensioner Valentina Krotova. 2007, Tver. Murder of unemployed Svetlana Medvedeva. And so on until 2013. Spider's methods. Popkov didn't choose victims randomly. He had a clear system. Phase 1. Target study, 1 to 2 weeks. Determined habits, routes, marital status, preferred single women aged 25 to 40, meticulously planned the encounter. Phase 2. Establishing contact. Introduced himself with different names and professions, was charming, well-spoken, understood psychology, could gain trust within 20 to 30 minutes of conversation. Phase 3. Victim isolation. Lured to secluded locations under various pretexts. Never acted spontaneously, always had a backup plan and escape route. Phase 4. Elimination. Strangled victims with bare hands or a rope, carefully removed all traces, never returned to crime scenes. He was a perfectionist. Every murder was like a chess game where he thought 3 moves ahead, recalls investigator Dmitry Karpov, who led the case. The 2025 confession. September 12, 2025. Popkov requested a meeting with investigators and made a shocking statement. There's another one. 1998. Before Ivanova. Her name was Yekaterina Smolina. I was only 22 then. I remember everything. Yekaterina Smolina, 19 years old, first-year student at Arkhangelsk Medical College. February 14, 1998, Valentine's Day. She met Popkov at a student party. He offered to walk her to the dormitory. She never made it there. He described how he lured her into an abandoned building, promising to show unusual graffiti. How he strangled her with her own scarf. How he hid the body in the basement, and it was discovered only 3 months later, already partially decomposed, investigator says. Yekaterina's case was officially classified as death from unknown causes. Now, 27 years later, the truth has finally emerged. Why confess now? Psychology professor Mikhail Vinogradov offers an explanation. Lifers reach a point where the weight of secrets becomes unbearable. They realize they have nothing left to lose. and sometimes confession becomes their last way to feel power. I decide when you learn the truth. But there's another theory. Some of them confess because they want to feel important again. Media attention, meetings with investigators, court sessions. It breaks the monotony of prison routine. They're playing their final performance, explains criminal psychologist Anna Koroleva. The verdict. November 27, 2025. The Arkhangelsk Regional Court sentenced Popkov to an additional 22 years for Ekaterina Smolina's murder, added to his existing life sentence. Justice has no expiration date, even 27 years later, prosecutor stated. Chapter 3. The Angarsk Maniac. The Never-Ending Confessions. Mikhail Popkov, Russia's most prolific serial killer. Irkutsk region, IK-7 colony. In a special block for particularly dangerous criminals sits a man whose name makes even seasoned investigators go pale. Mikhail Viktorovich Popkov, 60 years old. On his account, 86 proven victims, but experts believe the real number exceeds 100. From police officer to monster. Popkov was born March 7, 1964, in Angarsk, Irkutsk region. Served in the Soviet Army, then joined the police. From 1992 to 2012, he was a police detective in Angarsk. By day, he investigated crimes. By night, he committed them. The perfect double life lasted 20 years. The hunting system. Popkov targeted sex workers and intoxicated women returning from clubs or parties. His methods were frighteningly simple. Drove a police car, nobody fears a cop. Offered women rides home. Took them to secluded locations. Killed with an axe, hammer, or knife. He used his police status as camouflage. Victims trusted him until the last second, says investigator Alexei Markin. The first capture, 2012. Popkov was caught almost by accident. During a routine check of old cases, an analyst noticed similarities in DNA samples from different crime scenes. All traces led to one person. When arrested, Popkov initially denied everything, but when confronted with irrefutable evidence, he suddenly confessed to 22 murders, then to another 37, then even more. He confessed like he was listing groceries, no emotion, no remorse, just dry facts, date, place, method, recalls an investigator. Why so many? Psychiatrists who examined Popkov found a chilling motivation. He believed he was cleansing society of immoral women. In his twisted worldview, he was a moral guardian, not a murderer. A classic case of delusional messianism, explains psychiatrist Dmitry Shustov. But there's something more disturbing. Popkov carefully selected victims who fit his internal criteria. Women who drank alcohol, women who wore provocative clothing, women who behaved immorally. In his mind, he was judge, jury, and executioner, God's instrument on earth, Shustov adds. The Never-Ending Confessions. 2015, first trial. Verdict, life imprisonment for 22 murders. 2018, second trial. 56 more victims confirmed, another life sentence. 2020, another 8 murders. 2023, investigators arrive again. Popkov confesses to 3 more murders from the 1990s, and he's still not finished. Every few months, he remembers another victim. I believe he keeps confessing to maintain attention, to feel significant. It's his way of controlling the situation even from behind bars, says criminal psychologist Olga Dmitrieva. The 86th victim. March 2025. Popkov confesses to murdering Svetlana Martinova, 31 years old, mother of 2 children. June 23, 2003. She was returning from her friend's birthday party. Popkov offered her a ride. Svetlana accepted. After all, he was a police officer. She was found 3 days later in the woods, 40 kilometers from Angarsk. The case remained unsolved for 22 years. He remembered her name, what she was wearing, even what she said in the car before he killed her. Photographic memory for his own crimes, investigator says. The psychology of delayed confessions. Why do lifers suddenly start talking? Psychologist Mikhail Popkov outlines several reasons. Reason 1. Guilt. After years of silence, conscience awakens. Rare, but it happens. Reason 2. Attention. Confession brings investigators, journalists, court sessions, breaks prison monotony. Reason 3. Control. I decide when you learn the truth. Last way to feel power. Reason 4. Practical benefits. In some cases, confession can lead to slightly improved conditions, transfer to another facility, or additional visits. Reason 5. Mental changes. Years of isolation alter the psyche. What seemed important before loses meaning. But the main reason, Vinogradov emphasizes, is that they have nothing left to lose. They're already serving life sentences. New confessions change nothing for them, but for victims' families, it can bring closure. The horror behind the numbers. 86 confirmed victims, but Popkov himself hints there are more. I don't remember everyone. Some faces have blurred. Sometimes I'm not sure if it was a dream or reality. Investigators believe the real number exceeds 100, possibly 120. He killed for 20 years. If we take an average of 5 to 6 victims per year, we get 100 to 120. He's confessed to 86. Where are the rest? Asks investigator Alexei Markin. Chapter 4. The Moscow Strangler. 16 new victims. The man who turned the capital into a graveyard. Moscow, Butyrka Prison. In cell number 123 sits a man the press dubbed the meticulous Strangler. Alexander Viktorovich Belov, 52 years old. In 2015, he was convicted of killing 11 women across Moscow. In 2024, he confessed to 16 more. 27 victims total. One of the capital's most prolific serial killers. The double life. Belov appeared to be an exemplary citizen, worked as an accountant at a construction company, married, 2 children. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, always ready to help. But behind the facade of respectability lurked something dark. From 2003 to 2015, Belov killed women aged 45 to 60. Always the same pattern. Met victim in store or on street, offered help carrying groceries, followed to apartment, strangled when alone, stole money and valuables to make it look like robbery. He was incredibly patient, could observe a victim for weeks before striking. A true predator, says investigator Sergei Volkov. The 2015 capture. Belov was caught by chance. A surveillance camera in one apartment building captured him entering with an elderly woman. Hours later, he emerged alone. The woman was found dead. When arrested, Belov initially claimed innocence, but DNA evidence was irrefutable. His biological material was found at 11 crime scenes. When he realized there was no way out, he simply shrugged and said, "Well, what can you do? You got me," recalls the investigator. The 2024 Confessions, December 5, 2024. Belov requested a meeting with investigators and dropped a bombshell. There were more, 16 more. I kept notebooks, dates, names, addresses. You can check everything. And he wasn't lying. Belov had meticulously documented every murder in encrypted notebooks. Dates, victims' names, methods, even weather conditions. A murderer's diary spanning 12 years. It was the most detailed chronicle of serial killings I've ever seen. He described everything: what victims wore, what they said, how long they resisted. Like clinical case notes, says investigator. Why document everything? Psychiatrist Elena Makarova offers an explanation. For some serial killers, documentation is part of the ritual. They relive murders through notes, drawings, photographs. It's a way to extend the pleasure they derived from the act. But Belov offers a different explanation. I didn't want to forget. Each one was unique, special. They deserved to be remembered. By me, at least. The 27 victims. All of Belov's victims fit a specific profile. Women aged 45 to 65, living alone, middle to lower income, often pensioners or low-wage workers. He targeted the most vulnerable members of society, those no one pays attention to. When such women disappear, sometimes nobody even notices for weeks, notes investigator. Among the 16 newly confessed murders, Marina Sorokina, 53, cleaning lady, murdered April 12, 2005. Valentina Gromova, 61, pensioner, killed September 27, 2007. Lyudmila Petrakova, 48, store cashier, strangled January 14, 2009. And 13 more. Each name represents a destroyed life, a family that never learned the truth until 2024. Why confess in 2024? Belov's explanation is chilling. I'm 52. My children are adults now. My wife divorced me. I have nothing and no one. What's the point of keeping secrets? Let families know the truth. At least that. But psychologists suggest another motive. He wants to be recognized as great. 27 victims make him one of Moscow's most prolific killers. It's about legacy, twisted as that sounds, says psychologist Anna Koroleva. The trial and verdict. March 18, 2025. Moscow City Court sentenced Belov to an additional 20 years for the 16 new murders. Life sentence plus 20 years, legal formality, but symbolically important. During sentencing, relatives of victims were present. Some wept, others shouted curses. Belov remained expressionless. At least now we can bury Mother properly. We searched for her for 15 years, said the daughter of one victim. Chapter 5. Why They Confess. The Psychology of Late Revelations. Inside the Mind of a Lifer. What happens to a human psyche after years of solitary confinement? How do people who committed unimaginable atrocities live with their memories? Criminal psychologist Mikhail Vinogradov has interviewed over 200 lifers. His conclusions are disturbing. The 5 stages of imprisonment. Stage 1. Denial, first 3 years. Prisoner refuses to acknowledge guilt, insists on innocence or claims frame-up, fights conviction through appeals. Stage 2. Aggression, years 3 to 7. Anger at the system, society, victims, violent behavior toward guards and inmates, self-destructive tendencies. Stage 3. Bargaining, years 7 to 12. Attempts to negotiate better conditions, first hints of willingness to cooperate, testing waters with small confessions. Stage 4. Depression, years 12 to 17. Realization that life is over, loss of hope for release, suicidal thoughts. Stage 5. Acceptance, after 17 years. Coming to terms with reality, readiness to confess, desire to set records straight. Most late confessions happen during Stage 5, Vinogradov explains. That's when prisoners realize they have nothing left to lose and sometimes develop a peculiar desire for honesty. The weight of secrets. Keeping murder secrets exacts a psychological toll. Even psychopaths and sociopaths, those lacking empathy, still experience burden of hidden crimes. It's not conscience or guilt, clarifies psychiatrist Dmitry Shustov. It's the effort of maintaining a lie. Every hidden murder is mental baggage. Over decades, that weight becomes unbearable. Voronenko's diary entries illustrate this. Day 1342. Dreamed of Daria again. She was asking why I didn't tell her parents where her grave is. I know why, but I can't remember anymore. Day 2519. Sometimes I think it would be easier to tell everything, but then I remember, who cares? They'll just add more years to infinity. Day 3112. The new cellmate keeps asking about my victims, says if I don't tell, he'll kill me. Maybe that would be easier than this endless life. The confession as final control. For many lifers, confession becomes their last way to exert control. They've lost everything, freedom, family, future, but they still have one card to play, information. Deciding when and what to reveal gives them a sense of power, explains psychologist Anna Koroleva. This explains why confessions often come in pieces. First confession, 1 or 2 murders. 6 months later, a few more. Year later, additional details. They're parceling out information to maintain attention and relevance. It's manipulation, pure and simple, Koroleva adds. The search for meaning. Some lifers confess because they're trying to find meaning in their monstrous acts. They want to believe their crimes meant something, served some purpose. Confession becomes a way to create narrative, to explain themselves, if not to others, then to themselves, says Vinogradov. Popkov's words during one interrogation. I was cleaning the streets. Someone had to do it. Society was drowning in filth and I took action. Now you judge me, but you should thank me. Delusional? Yes. But for Popkov, this delusion gives his actions meaning, making them bearable. The role of time. Time changes perception. What seemed important decades ago loses significance. After 20 years in a cell, hiding additional murders seems pointless. The fear that drove initial denials has faded, notes Vinogradov. Bielov's explanation? In 2015, I thought maybe I'd get out someday if I only confessed to some murders. Now I know. I'll die here. So why keep lying? Religious awakening. Some lifers find religion in prison, and this prompts confession. They start believing in afterlife, in divine judgment. Confession becomes a way to cleanse the soul before death, explains prison chaplain Father Dmitry. But psychologists are skeptical. True religious conversion is rare. More often, it's a psychological crutch, a way to rationalize confession without admitting they're seeking attention or control, says Koroleva. The families of victims. For families, late confessions bring mixed emotions. On one hand, they finally know the truth. On the other, sometimes ignorance was easier. Hope is better than certainty of death, reflects investigator Alexander Gavrilov. Maria Sokolova, mother of one of Voronenko's victims. For 18 years I hoped Daria was alive somewhere. Maybe she lost her memory. Maybe she was living another life. When I learned the truth, I couldn't breathe. But at least now I know. At least now I can stop hoping and start grieving properly. The investigator's perspective. Investigators have complex feelings about late confessions. On one hand, we close cases, give families closure. On the other, we know the killer is enjoying this, the attention, the power. It feels like we're playing their game. admits investigator Sergei Volkov. But the consensus is clear. Truth is worth it. Every confession, no matter how late, is a victory for justice. Families deserve to know. Society deserves to know, states prosecutor Igor Volkov. Chapter 6. The Price of Justice. Families speak out. 20 years of waiting. Moscow, February 2025. I'm sitting in a small apartment in Biryulovo district, across from Irina Vladimirovna Sorokina, 68 years old. Her hands tremble as she holds a faded photograph. This is Marina, my daughter. She was 53 when she disappeared, 20 years ago this April. Marina Sorokina vanished April 12, 2005. Went to work, never came home. Police investigated, but found nothing. Case went cold. For 20 years, Irina lived in limbo. Every time the phone rang, my heart would stop. Maybe it's her. Maybe she'll call, say she's alive, had amnesia, anything. Even bad news would have been better than not knowing. December 2024, investigators contacted her. Alexander Belov had confessed. Marina was one of his victims. When they told me, I couldn't process it. 20 years of hope just vanished. But you know what? I felt relief. Finally, I knew. Finally, I could stop waiting. The impossible choice. For families of disappeared persons, late confessions present an impossible choice: hope versus closure. Hope keeps you going, but it also keeps you prisoner. You can't move forward, can't grieve, can't heal. You're stuck in limbo, explains grief counselor Olga Mikhailova. Tatiana Petrovna Logvinenko, mother of one of Voronenko's victims. When Natasha disappeared in '94, I thought maybe she ran away, maybe she started a new life. For 30 years I looked for her in crowds, in every woman who looked similar. Part of me died when I learned the truth, but another part was freed. The anger. Many families feel rage toward the killers, not for the murders themselves, but for the decades of silence. He killed my daughter in 2006, but he made me suffer for 17 additional years by not telling me. That's 17 years of false hope, of searching, of not sleeping. How do I forgive that? Asks Maria Sokolova, mother of Daria. Psychologist Anna Koroleva explains, families often feel betrayed twice, once by the murder, once by the decades-long deception. The anger is legitimate and intense. The gratitude. Paradoxically, some families feel grateful for late confessions, no matter how delayed. At least he told us. He could have taken the secret to his grave. My friend's daughter disappeared 30 years ago, and she still doesn't know what happened. At least I have closure, says Irina Sorokina. This gratitude troubles some psychologists. It's disturbing that families feel they should be grateful to murderers for basic decency, for telling the truth. It shows how broken the system is, notes Koroleva. The burden of knowledge. But closure comes with its own burden, knowing the details. They told me everything, how he lured her, what he did, how long she suffered. I didn't want to know, but they thought I deserved full truth. Now I can't sleep without seeing it, says Tatiana Logvinenko. Grief counselor Mikhailova. Families need to know their loved one is dead. They rarely need to know how. But investigators often don't understand this distinction. The funeral that never was. One of the most painful aspects, many victims' remains were never found. Belov told us where he left mother's body, but it was 20 years ago in woods outside Moscow. Area has been developed since then, apartments, roads. We searched, but found nothing. explains Alexei Sorokin, son of victim. No body means no funeral, no grave to visit, no place to mourn. I have nowhere to go on her birthday, on holidays. I have no place to talk to her. The confession gave me knowledge, but not peace, Alexei adds. The children of victims. Children of victims, especially those young when parent disappeared, face unique challenges. I was 7 when Mama vanished. I'm 32 now. For 25 years I've imagined her coming back, walking through the door. Now I know she never will. I'm grieving a parent I lost 25 years ago, but the grief is fresh, like she died yesterday, says Oksana Gromova, daughter of victim. Child psychologist Dmitry Orlov. Delayed grief is particularly difficult. These adults are mourning with childhood emotions mixed with adult understanding. It's a psychological minefield. The siblings' guilt. Siblings of victims often carry irrational guilt. Daria was my little sister. I was supposed to protect her. For 17 years I hoped she was alive, that I'd find her. Now I know I failed. She died and I couldn't save her, says Andrei Sokolov, brother of victim. Survivor guilt is common among families of murder victims. In cases of late confession, it can be even more intense because they've spent decades imagining rescue scenarios that were impossible from the start, explains psychologist Koroleva. The impact on marriages. Many marriages don't survive the stress of a disappeared loved one. My husband and I divorced 5 years after Marina vanished. We couldn't talk about it without fighting. He wanted to accept she was dead and move on. I couldn't. Eventually, we had nothing left to say to each other, recalls Irina Sorokina. Studies show marriages where a child or a close relative disappears have a 70% divorce rate within 10 years. The ripple effect. The impact extends beyond immediate family. My daughter became agoraphobic after her sister disappeared. She's afraid to let her own children out of sight. One murder destroyed multiple lives across 3 generations, says grandmother of victim. Community impact. Late confessions also affect entire communities. When we learned that 27 women in our district were murdered by one man over 12 years, people panicked. Everyone remembered someone who disappeared, wondered if it was him. The neighborhood has changed. People are suspicious, afraid, says local resident. The question of forgiveness. I ask every family member I interview, can you forgive? The answers vary. Never. He stole my daughter and then stole 20 more years by lying. Unforgivable. Maria Sokolova. I don't forgive him, but I'm grateful he finally told the truth. Is that strange? Irina Sorokina. Forgiveness isn't for him. It's for me. I have to let go of anger or it will destroy me too. Tatiana Logbinenko. How can I forgive someone who isn't sorry? He confessed for his own reasons, not because he cares about us. Andrei Sokolov. Psychologist Vinogradov. Forgiveness is personal. There's no right answer. Some find peace through forgiveness, others through anger. Both are valid. The media circus. Another source of pain. Media attention following confessions. Journalists camped outside my apartment for weeks. They wanted me to cry on camera, to express hatred, to make good television. My grief became entertainment, says Oksana Gromova. Families of victims deserve privacy, but in high-profile cases, that's rarely what they get, notes victim advocate Elena Novikova. Moving forward. How do families rebuild after learning the truth? Slowly, with therapy, with support groups, with time. But you never fully recover. You learn to live with a hole in your heart, says Irina Sorokina. Support group leader Olga Mikhailova. We teach families that grief has no timeline. Whether your loved one died yesterday or 20 years ago, Your pain is valid. The first step is accepting that life will never be the same, and that's okay. The final word. I ask Irina Sorokina, if you could speak to Belov, what would you say? She's quiet for a long moment, then, thank you for finally telling me. And damn you for making me wait 20 years to say goodbye. Chapter 7. Inside Russia's death colonies, where monsters live out their days. Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous District, beyond the Arctic Circle. Temperature, -48 degrees Celsius. Wind speeds, 60 kilometers per hour. This is where Russia sends those it wants to forget forever. Polar Owl Colony, home to 237 lifers. The most isolated prison in the Russian Federation, 67 kilometers from the nearest settlement. Welcome to Hell on Earth. The architecture of despair. The colony consists of 3 long buildings, each housing a wing of solitary cells. 7 square meters per cell. 1 narrow window with frosted glass. Concrete walls 60 centimeters thick. We designed this facility with one goal, to ensure that escape is literally impossible. The nearest town is 67 kilometers away. In this climate, you'd freeze to death in hours, explains former warden Viktor Solovyov. Each cell contains a narrow metal bed bolted to floor, a toilet and sink in the corner, a small metal table and chair. Nothing else. No decorations, no personal items beyond basics, no television for the first 10 years. This isn't meant to be comfortable. This is punishment, Solovyov adds. The daily routine, life in Polar Owl, follows rigid schedule. 6 a.m., wake up. 6:30 a.m., breakfast, passed through food slot indoor. 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., exercise in aquarium, concrete yard. 8:30 a.m. to 10 p.m., locked in cell. 10 p.m., lights out. 22.5 hours per day in a 7 square meter cell. For life. The first year is hardest. Many go insane. Some attempt suicide. Those who survive learn to live in their own heads, says prison psychologist Dmitry Orlov. The aquarium. The exercise yard is nicknamed aquarium by inmates. A concrete space 3 meters by 4 meters, surrounded by 5-meter walls, open to sky. It's not really exercise. They walk in circles for 90 minutes alone. No equipment, no other inmates, just concrete and sky. In winter, it's -40 to 50. In summer, it barely reaches +5, describes guard Alexei Petrov. Some inmates refuse to use the aquarium. What's the point? Walking in circles in the freezing cold? I'd rather stay in my cell, says one lifer. Social isolation. Lifers are kept in complete isolation from other prisoners. They're too dangerous. We can't risk them influencing younger inmates or forming alliances, so they're alone, always, explains Solovyov. Visits from family are permitted twice per year, each lasting 2 hours, with bulletproof glass between visitor and prisoner. Most inmates stop receiving visits after 5 to 7 years. Families move on. Who wants to travel to the Arctic Circle twice a year to talk through glass to someone who'll never get out? Notes psychologist Orlov. The psychological impact. Complete social isolation for years has devastating effects. Auditory hallucinations. I hear voices of victims, of my mother, of people I knew. Visual hallucinations. I see things that aren't there, shadows moving. Dissociation. Sometimes I feel like I'm watching myself from outside my body. Time distortion. Days blend together. I can't remember if something happened yesterday or 5 years ago. Extended solitary confinement is essentially torture. It breaks the human psyche. Some inmates emerge less human than when they entered, says human rights advocate Irina Komarova. But colony officials disagree. These aren't innocent people. They're serial killers, rapists, monsters. They chose this path. Our job is to ensure they never hurt anyone again, states Warden. The inmate hierarchy. Even in isolation, there's hierarchy among lifers based on crimes committed. Bottom tier. Child killers and rapists, universally despised. Middle tier. Killers of women, looked down upon but not as hated. Top tier. Killers of men, especially criminals or rivals, given grudging respect. In the rare moments when inmates interact, during medical visits for example, this hierarchy is enforced. Child killers are spat on, called names, sometimes attacked, explains guard Petrov. Voronenko, as a child killer, is at the absolute bottom. Other lifers won't even look at him. To them, he's lower than dirt. In prison culture, killing children is unforgivable, even among murderers, says psychologist Orlov. The notebook obsession. Many lifers keep detailed diaries or notebooks. It's their way of maintaining sanity, of feeling like their thoughts matter. Some write about their crimes, some about their past, some about fantasies of freedom, explains Orlov. Voronenko's diary is particularly extensive. 2,847 daily entries over 17 years. He wrote about everything: his childhood, his victims, his dreams, his regrets, if he has any. It's a window into the mind of a serial killer, says investigator Gavrilov. The guard's perspective. Working in a death colony takes its own toll. You're isolated too. Shifts are 28 days on, 14 days off. During those 28 days, you're stuck here with the worst humans on Earth. It changes you, admits guard Petrov. Many guards develop PTSD, depression, or substance abuse issues. You can't spend years around such darkness without it seeping into you. I've seen guards quit after one shift. Others last decades but become cold, detached, almost inhuman themselves, says former warden Solovyov. The death rate. Despite being called life sentences, few inmates actually die of old age. Statistics from Polar Owl, 1995 to 2025, suicide, 42%, murder by other inmates, 18%, accidents, circumstances unclear, 15%, natural causes, 25%. The average lifer survives 12 to 14 years. Very few make it to 20. This place kills you one way or another, says medical officer. The confessions room. In 2023, Polar Owl created a special confessions room, a soundproof space where inmates can speak with investigators without being overheard by other prisoners. We realized that many wanted to confess but were afraid of repercussions from other inmates. This room gives them privacy and safety to talk, explains Warden. Since its creation, confessions have increased by 300%. It's become almost popular. Inmates request meetings because it breaks the monotony. Even if they have nothing new to confess, they'll make up stories just to spend an hour talking to someone, notes investigator Gavrilov. The cost running. Polar Owl costs the Russian government approximately 3,000 rubles, about $32 per inmate per day. Total annual cost, over 100 million rubles, approximately $1.1 million. Critics say it's too expensive to keep these people alive. But what's the alternative? Execution? Russia abolished the death penalty. This is the price of civilization. We punish, but we don't kill, argues prison reform advocate. Others disagree. Why should taxpayers feed and house monsters for decades? Execute them and be done with it. That money could go to victims' families, argues conservative politician. The debate continues. Russia's death colonies exist in legal and moral gray zone. Human rights organizations condemn the conditions as inhumane. Government officials defend them as necessary for public safety. Inmates themselves have mixed feelings. Death would be mercy. This is just slow torture. Anonymous lifer. I deserve this. Every day of suffering is penance for what I did. Another inmate. The truth likely lies somewhere between punishment and torture, between justice and revenge. But one thing is certain: those who enter Polar Owl rarely leave, except in a coffin. Chapter 8. The Science of Monsters. Understanding the Serial Killer Mind. Moscow, Serbsky Federal Medical Research Center of Psychiatry and Narcology. In a third-floor laboratory, Dr. Elena Makarova studies brain scans of serial killers. "Look at this," she says, pointing to a screen. "This is a normal brain. This is the brain of a serial killer. See the difference?" The prefrontal cortex, responsible for impulse control and empathy, shows significantly reduced activity in the killer's brain. It's not an excuse, but it helps us understand. These individuals are, neurologically speaking, different from the rest of us. The biology of murder. Recent research has identified several biological markers common in serial killers. Prefrontal cortex abnormalities. Reduced activity in areas controlling impulses and moral reasoning. Amygdala dysfunction. Impaired fear response and emotional processing. Low serotonin levels, linked to aggressive and impulsive behavior. High testosterone levels, correlated with violence and risk-taking. But here's the crucial point, Dr. Makarova emphasizes. Millions of people have these biological markers. Only a tiny fraction become serial killers. Biology is in destiny. The environment factor. Psychiatrist Dmitry Shustov has interviewed over 150 serial killers in Russian prisons. He's found consistent environmental factors. Childhood abuse. 92% experienced physical, sexual, or severe emotional abuse. Neglect. 87% lacked stable parental figures. Early trauma. 95% witnessed or experienced violence before age 10. Social isolation. 83% had difficulty forming peer relationships. The typical serial killer comes from a broken home, experienced trauma, felt isolated and powerless as a child. Killing becomes a way to regain control and power, Shustov explains. The McDonald Triad. In the 1960s, psychiatrist J.M. McDonald identified 3 childhood behaviors predictive of violent behavior in adulthood. 1. Cruelty to animals. 2. Obsession with fire setting. 3. Persistent bedwetting beyond age 5. Voronenko exhibited all 3. Popkov exhibited 2. Popkov exhibited all 3. It's not a perfect predictor. Many children exhibit these behaviors without becoming killers, but it's a significant warning sign, notes child psychologist Dmitry Orlov. The fantasy phase. Serial killers don't start with murder. They start with fantasy. For years, sometimes decades, they fantasize about killing. These fantasies become more elaborate, more detailed, more intense. Eventually, fantasy isn't enough. They need to make it real, explains criminal psychologist Mikhail Vinogradov. Voronenko's diary contains fantasy entries dating back to age 14, 9 years before his first murder. "I think about it all the time, how it would feel, what I would do. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about it." The trigger. What transforms fantasy into action? Research identifies common triggers: life stressors, job loss, divorce, financial problems. Perceived rejection, romantic failure, social humiliation. Access to victims, new job or situation providing opportunities. Substance use, alcohol or drugs lowering inhibitions. For Voronenko, the trigger was his mother's death in 1994. He'd fantasized for years but never acted. His mother's death removed the last restraint. Within 3 months, he committed his first murder, notes investigator. The cooling off period. Unlike mass murderers who kill many quickly, serial killers have cooling off periods between murders, days, weeks, or months. After a murder, they experience emotional release. The fantasy is fulfilled temporarily. But gradually the urge builds again until they must kill again, explains Vinogradov. The time between murders often decreases as the killer's career progresses. Popkov's timeline. First murder, 1992, to second murder, 1994, 2 years. Second to third murder, 1 year. Third to fourth murder, 6 months. By 2000 to 2012, killing every 2 to 3 weeks. They're chasing the high. Like drug addicts, they need bigger and more frequent doses to achieve the same effect, says Dr. Makarova. The typology of serial killers. FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit classifies serial killers into 4 types. Visionary. Driven by delusions or hallucinations, rare. Mission-oriented. Believe they're eliminating undesirable people. Hedonistic. Kill for pleasure or material gain. Power, control. Kill for feeling of dominance over victims. Popkov fits mission-oriented. Believed he was cleansing society. Voronenko fits power, control. Enjoyed dominating vulnerable victims. Popkov fits hedonistic. Derived sexual pleasure from killing. Belov fits multiple categories, elements of hedonistic, robbery, and power control. The question of psychopathy. Are all serial killers psychopaths? Not necessarily, says Dr. Makarova. Psychopathy, characterized by lack of empathy, shallow emotions, and manipulative behavior, is common but not universal among serial killers. Psychopathy assessment, PCLR test, scores out of 40. General population average, 4 to 5. Clinical psychopathy, 30 or above. Popkov, 38. Voronenko, 35. Popkov, 39. Belov, 33. They're all psychopaths by clinical definition, but their psychopathy manifests differently based on other factors: intelligence, impulse control, childhood experiences, Dr. Makarova explains. Can they be treated? The uncomfortable truth: we have no effective treatment for psychopathic serial killers. Therapy doesn't work. They're not motivated to change because they don't see their behavior as problematic. Medications can reduce impulsivity, but don't address the underlying issues, admits psychiatrist Shustov. Some experimental approaches show marginal promise: intensive cognitive behavioral therapy, transcranial magnetic stimulation to alter brain activity, high-dose omega-3 fatty acids to improve prefrontal cortex function. But success rates remain below 5%. The harsh reality is that once someone crosses the line into serial murder, they're essentially unredeemable by current medical standards, Shustov concludes. The ethical dilemma. This raises profound questions. If serial killers have biological brain differences, are they fully responsible? If childhood trauma creates killers, is society partially culpable? If treatment doesn't work, what's the point of life imprisonment versus execution? These are questions without easy answers, reflects prison reform advocate Irina Komarova. We want to believe in redemption, in human dignity, in rehabilitation, but with serial killers, evidence suggests none of these may be possible. The pattern recognition problem. One reason serial killers evade capture for years: law enforcement struggles to recognize patterns across different jurisdictions. Each murder is investigated separately. Only when someone connects the dots, often years later, do we realize we're dealing with a serial killer, explains investigator Gavrilov. The Maniac system, detailed in next chapter, aims to solve this through AI pattern recognition. The interrogation challenge. Interviewing serial killers requires specialized training. They're manipulative, deceptive, and often enjoy the game of the interview. You must stay emotionally detached while building rapport, a difficult balance, says veteran investigator Sergei Volkov. Common interrogation tactics. Appeal to ego. You're clearly intelligent. Help us understand. Minimize judgment. Never express disgust or moral condemnation. Focus on details. Ask about specifics that only the killer would know. Use patience. Some confessions take dozens of hours over weeks. The moment you show emotion, anger, disgust, shock, you lose. They'll shut down, or worse, start lying to manipulate you, Volkov advises. The copycat problem. Media coverage of serial killers can inspire copycats. Detailed reporting on methods, victim selection, and killer psychology gives potential killers a roadmap. It's a serious concern, notes FBI consultant working with Russian law enforcement. This is why modern coverage emphasizes victims over perpetrators, avoids glorifying killers, and limits technical details. We want to inform the public without creating a manual for aspiring killers, explains journalist ethics consultant. The future of understanding research continues in multiple directions. Genetic studies, identifying DNA markers associated with violent behavior. Neuroimaging, real-time brain scans during therapy to understand thought processes. Artificial intelligence, analyzing patterns in behavior and language to predict violence risk. We're making progress, but slowly. The human mind remains the most complex thing we study, concludes Dr. Makarova. Chapter 9. Protecting Society, Technology Against Monsters. The Maniac System, AI Against Killers. Russia's most secret law enforcement development, the Maniac System, originally created in 1980 for Moscow Olympic security. In 2025, it received a revolutionary upgrade. How the system works. Analyzes all murders in real time across Russia. Identifies connections between crimes using 200-plus parameters. Builds psychological profiles of suspected serial killers. Prediction accuracy, 87%. The system analyzes the killer's signature, time intervals between crimes, geography, methods, victim profiles. Then it predicts where and when the next crime will occur, explains forensic analyst Alexei Danilov. The digital twin. In 2025, MIET, Moscow Institute of Electronic Technology, completed development of revolutionary technology, the serial killer's digital twin. How it works. Neural network trained on materials from 250 solved cases. Models the specific killer's psychology and behavior. Predicts location and timing of next crime with 80 to 85% accuracy. Once we identify patterns suggesting a serial killer, we input all data into the neural network. It generates a prediction. The next murder will likely occur at such location at such time, explains Institute Director Lev Bertovsky. Real-world success. In November 2024, the system predicted a serial killer would strike in St. Petersburg's Frunzensky district within a specific 3-day window. Police increased patrols, arrested a suspect attempting to abduct a woman, and discovered he was responsible for 4 previous murders. Genetic criminology. Russia's DNA database in 2025 contains over 2 million samples. Every day, the database grows by 500 to 700 new profiles. Revolutionary achievements in 2025. AI determines criminals' appearance from DNA with 95% accuracy. Birthplace determination accurate to 50 kilometers. Genealogical search through public databases. Genealogical searching helped catch American serial killer Joseph James DeAngelo, Golden State Killer, in 2018. Now this technology is available in Russia. How it works. DNA from crime scene uploaded to public genealogy databases. System identifies distant relatives, third to fifth cousins. Investigators build family trees to narrow down suspects. We recently solved a 22-year-old cold case using this method. The killer's third cousin had uploaded DNA to a genealogy website. From there, we traced the family tree and identified the perpetrator, explains forensic geneticist. Safe City System. Moscow and St. Petersburg operate 200,000-plus cameras with facial recognition systems. Since 2020, it has helped detect over 26,000 wanted individuals. In 2025, the system gained new capabilities. Gait and gesture analysis can identify individuals even with faces covered. Emotion and aggressive behavior recognition flags potential threats in real time. Predictive analytics. System predicts where crimes may occur. The system analyzes years of crime data, identifies patterns. This street corner has high assault rates on Friday nights between 10 p.m. and midnight. We increase patrols there preemptively, explains Moscow Police Technology Director. Privacy concerns? Advocates worry about surveillance state implications. There's a balance between security and freedom. Right now, we're erring on the side of security, admits government official. How to protect yourself and loved ones. Understanding serial killer psychology is the primary defense tool. They use predictable patterns. Red flags in behavior. Warning 1. Excessive charm from strangers. Overly friendly behavior. Attempts to gain trust quickly. Knowledge of personal details they shouldn't have. Warning 2. Isolation tactics. Suggestions to go to secluded locations. Requests to turn off phone for privacy. Pressure not to tell friends about meeting. Warning 3. Professional approach. Suspiciously good knowledge of area. Vehicle or tools readily available. Pre-planned explanations and alibis. Safety rules. Always, inform loved ones where you are and with whom. Trust your intuition. If something feels wrong, leave. Keep phone charged and accessible. Share real-time location with trusted contacts. Never. Go to isolated locations with strangers. Get in vehicles with people you don't know well. Disable phone geolocation. Ignore gut feelings of danger. Teaching children. Children are particularly vulnerable. Essential safety lessons. No to strangers, even friendly, well-dressed ones. Never go anywhere with someone without parent permission, even if they claim to know parents. Scream and run if someone tries to grab them. Trust their feelings. If adult makes them uncomfortable, tell parent immediately. Most child predators appear normal, even trustworthy. Teaching children to trust instinct over appearance is critical, emphasizes child safety expert. For women. Women are disproportionately targeted by serial killers. Additional precautions. Vary routes and schedules. Predictability makes you vulnerable. Stay in well-lit, populated areas after dark. Keep keys between fingers as improvised weapon. Take self-defense courses. Confidence deters predators. Serial killers seek easy targets. Appearing alert, confident, and aware makes you a harder target. Often, that's enough to make them move on to someone else, notes self-defense instructor. The bystander effect. Many attacks happen in public, yet witnesses don't intervene due to bystander effect. Assumption someone else will help. Break the pattern. If you see something suspicious, call police immediately. Don't assume others have already called. Offer help to anyone who seems distressed or in danger. Document with phone camera if safe to do so. Every serial killer caught by bystander intervention is dozens of lives saved, states victim advocate Elena Novikova. Technology as defense. Modern technology offers protection our grandparents never had. Smartphone safety apps send automatic alerts if you don't check in. Wearable panic buttons, disguised as jewelry, trigger emergency response. GPS trackers, hidden in clothing or bags for children and elderly. Video doorbells, screen visitors before opening door. Technology isn't perfect, but it significantly increases safety. Use it, advises security consultant. Community vigilance. Safe communities require collective effort. Know your neighbors. Isolation benefits predators. Report suspicious behavior. Better to be wrong than silent. Organize neighborhood watch programs. Keep shared spaces well lit and maintained. Serial killers thrive in anonymous urban environments where nobody pays attention. Community vigilance destroys that advantage, notes criminologist. The uncomfortable truth. Despite all precautions, risk can never be eliminated to zero. Serial killers are rare. Your odds of encountering one are extremely low, but they exist. Balance awareness with living a normal life. Don't become paranoid, but don't be oblivious either, advises psychologist Vinogradov. The goal isn't to live in fear, but to live with informed caution. Epilogue. Memory is stronger than oblivion. Winter, 2025. Polar owl colony. Outside, polar wind howls, temperature -45 Celsius. In solitary cell number 237, Dmitry Voronenko writes another page in his diary. Day 6401 of imprisonment. A priest visited today, spoke of forgiveness. But some sins aren't forgiven by God or humans. I understand this. The price of truth. In 2025, thanks to late confessions from serial killers, 47 cold cases were solved across Russia. 47 families finally learned the truth about their loved ones' fates. Mother hoped for 20 years that Elena was alive, somewhere far away, maybe with memory loss. When she learned the truth, she wept at first. Then she said, "At least now I know where her grave is," recalls an investigator about a victim's mother's reaction. Statistics of pain. Russian prisons hold over 2,000 lifers. Of them, 847 serial killers, each responsible for 3 to 86 victims. 1,153 killers who committed especially grave crimes. Experts estimate they're hiding information about 3,000 to 5,000 more victims. This means thousands of Russian families still don't know the truth about their missing loved ones. A lesson for humanity. Studying serial killers isn't morbid curiosity, it's a life necessity. Understanding monster psychology is our primary shield against them. Every new confession, every detail of their methods makes society safer, believes criminal psychologist Mikhail Popkov. Technology against evil. By 2030, Russian law enforcement plans to identify 95% of serial criminals after the third crime, prevent 70% of potential murders through predictive analytics, create unified DNA database of all Russian citizens. We're building a world where serial killers simply won't have a chance to hide for long, declares director of the Research Institute of Criminology. Dear viewers, we conclude this difficult but necessary journey into the dark depths of human psychology. For 62 minutes, we've discussed monsters, but not to glorify them. We discussed them to protect against them. Remember the main thing. Evil among us is real. It can wear a suit and tie, smile to your face, help elderly people cross the street. Serial killers are masters of disguise. But we have weapons against them: knowledge, technology, and our humanity. This humanity is what distinguishes us from those we discussed today. Take care of yourself and loved ones. trust your intuition, and remember, in a world where such monsters exist, every day without tragedy is already a victory. Red Archive continues. Our investigation doesn't end here. Ahead lie new mysteries, new revelations, new attempts to uncover truth where others fear or refuse to look. Subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, and remember, knowledge is the light that disperses darkness, and there's plenty of darkness around us. Until the next investigation, stay safe.